Hello, this is Brian Casey, and we are here at HIMSS 2023 in Chicago. I'm pleased to have with me Steve Holloway. He is Executive Director at UK market intelligence firm Signify Research. Steve, thanks for being with us today.
Great to be here, Brian, as ever.
Yeah, so we talked to each other at various trade shows. I think
Yep.
we talked at, we talked on the side at ECR, we talked at RSNA.
Yep.
And so you've got a pretty good perspective on kind of some of the high-level trends that we're seeing here at HIMSS. What are some of the top
Yep.
three things that you think are really interesting?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the top three trends, cloud would probably be number one in terms of the most talked about theme in terms of all the vendor discussions we're having. And I think what's really interesting there from an imaging perspective is the discussions moving more towards actually how do you achieve the transition of imaging informatics into the cloud and getting into more of the specifics. So it's less now about, should we move to the cloud? I think that's seen now as inevitable. So it's really about the logistics and the mechanics of how you do that. And I think looking at costs and looking at security and really what the impact will be longer term is now becoming a much bigger part for imaging informatics moving forward. And a lot of the vendors here are grappling with that and also partnering up with the big hyperscalers too.
Yeah.
So
what do you think led to that shift? Why is it, healthcare providers were really reluctant to let go of their data. They were keeping it on premises. What caused the change?
Yeah, I think COVID was part of the change. There was suddenly a need for greater accessibility, greater flexibility. I think the underlying cybersecurity risk is also there, and actually hyperscalers invest billions and billions of dollars in cybersecurity protection, far more than any healthcare provider network can do.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I think just the scale and complexity of not just imaging informatics, but broader sort of healthcare integration and interoperability means that you need to have some way of sort of centralizing and consolidating over time. And once you started looking at digital pathology and genomics and precision medicine, that's only really achievable with cloud.
What about trend number two?
So number two, I would say, probably in terms of hype, would be generative AI.
Right.
So the news with Epic and Nuance around ChatGPT, and really, that first foray into generative AI within healthcare, I think is really interesting.
Yep.
We see it as a long-term game changer, but there's a long way to go in terms of understanding how that really plays out, and there's a lot of sort of regulatory, ethical, legal things to work through. Most of the discussions we've had with vendors so far are, they're moving slowly, they're moving in a very considered way. But for imaging particularly, I think where it's going to be transformative down the line is going to be around structured reporting.
Yes.
And really that might be the technology that really moves structured reporting from just basic templating towards a much more malleable, useful and structured output from imaging, which gets really interesting then when you start to combine it with AI image analysis tools and those sorts of things. And also will fundamentally help radiologists sort of augment their daily workload as well.
Right. Now what do you got for number three?
And then number three really, and this is a trend we've talked lots about before, but it's enterprise imaging. And specifically I think now that COVID has abated and some of the sort of operational pressures have gone from critical down to still a challenge, but we're handling it for healthcare providers. There's now a refocusing on sort of midterm strategy around how do you bring all of the disparate types of imaging together into one consolidated platform. So there's quite a showing of digital pathology here, which is really interesting for HIMSS, because that's not really something I've seen before.
It's going to be high.
But also things like point of care ultrasound or dermatology, wound care, oncology imaging. How is all of this brought together into a centralized and usable location that actually has an impact in terms of care management as well? So there's a big workflow and interoperability play tying into that too. But that's something that's really, I think, is going to grow and grow momentum over the next couple of years, and especially into RSNA.
Great, well that'll be exciting to watch.
Great.
All right, well Steve, thanks again, and safe travels.
Great, thanks Brian.
Signing off from HIMSS 2023, my name is Brian Casey.